Hey folks, welcome to this week's Texas Counts Weekly Update. We just went live on Facebook and then we just opened up the webinar. So I'm going to give it a minute or so for folks to be able to tune in. But thanks again so much for joining us today, and we will get started in just a minute. Okay, folks, we are going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome everyone to this week's Texas Counts Weekly Update. Today is Monday, August 3rd. We have a lot of really important information to cover today, so we are going to go ahead and get started. As you know, we have some fabulous folks joining us today who serve as panelists during this discussion. But before we really get into today's agenda, I did just want to take a brief moment and pause for a second, this being the anniversary of the atrocity that happened in El Paso a year ago today. And so today and always we are with you, with our friends out in West Texas. We are always El Paso strong. So please do know that we are thinking about you, your families, your communities today. And so just wanted to take a quick moment and pause. Thanks, everybody. As you know, I am joined by two of my favorite people in Texas, one being Dr. Lila Valencia. As you know, she's going to walk us through that self-response data, and we are also joined by Ms. Genesis Sanchez from the Leo Educational Fund, who is going to be sharing out those really important updates regarding the 2020 census. And so, of course, we always start off our webinar with a brief welcome. Then we'll pass it over to Genesis to share out those updates. Again, do know that new information is continuing to come in, and we will try to answer any and all questions you might have. So for folks tuning in on Zoom, feel free to use the Q&A box or the chat function, and then our friends joining us on Facebook, feel free to comment as well. After Genesis goes through those updates, Lila will walk us through the self-response data. And then after that, I'm really excited. We have two fabulous women joining us today from the Valley, Miss Sarah and Thelma. They're going to be talking about a really exciting opportunity around the census that we want to share with y'all. And then we'll round things off with some get out the count efforts and ways for you to engage and get involved. But without further ado, I am going to pass this over to Genesis to walk us through some updates.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you everybody for joining us. I have a lot to cover, as you can all imagine, and as you all know. Please bear with me and with us. We are also trying to piece together kind of what our solid guidance is going to be around some of these changes. This census has been, as you all know, very dynamic. Things change by the minute. There have been instances where I've been on a call, and then, you know, during that call, the Bureau decides something different. And so these changes, we appreciate your patience while we also kind of sift through them and try to provide as much guidance as possible. Next slide. So right after our last call on July 21st, the Trump administration issued a presidential memo titled "A Memorandum on Excluding Illegal Aliens from the Apportion Base Following the 2020 Census." I want to very quickly cover this. I think it's very important. There is ongoing litigation by a number of parties. I don't have them listed here, but they're pretty easy to find online. But what I do want to cover is that although this memo was issued, this memo does not impact the count as it is currently, right? So what some important takeaways to take from the memo is that the 2020 census does not ask about citizenship or status. and they will continue to count everyone. The enumeration has not changed and will not intentionally leave out undocumented immigrants, and that the policy memo did not stipulate that undocumented folks would not be counted. Again, the memo actually focuses on data manipulation after the enumeration. However, this is unconstitutional. It's very blatantly unconstitutional. It's very much clearly an attack on our immigrant communities, and we should take it as such. The census is a count of everyone, regardless of their sex, age, race, or immigration status. And we've seen time and time again that this administration has done their part to try to minimize the count. This is clearly an attempt to scare immigrants from completing the census and to add a lot of confusion into the political environment. So it's going to be even more important for us as trusted messengers in our community to continue to reiterate to people that the count is a count for everybody, that it doesn't matter what status or immigration you have, that you count, and that it is required by law for folks to fill out. It's important too, we just wanted to also share that this is not an executive order, which is different. We saw when this news came down that a lot of media organizations were confusing the two. If you want to learn more about the differences, I linked kind of like a FAQ here. Asian Americans Advancing Justice has really helpful talking points around it. Much of what I took from them is what's listed here. So you can look at them here as well. I'll link that as well. And then again, litigation against the memo is ongoing. So we're keeping an eye on it, trying to understand exactly what will happen with this. But again, this really does impact data manipulation after the enumeration. Again, it's unconstitutional. And then we do have talking points as well. We have them in English and Spanish, which are linked here as well. Next slide. So some of the good news that has come out of the last few weeks is that the Census Bureau is planning on sending out a 7th mailing and a paper questionnaire to the lowest responding tracts. This happened because there was a lot of advocacy. Folks like us, folks like you, said that there was a big need for this in our communities. Sending a paper questionnaire is much cheaper than sending someone to the door. And so we're really happy about this, this development. And this is scheduled for September. We don't have concrete dates around this, but once we do, we'll be able to help plan a little bit more weeks of action potentially, and we'll let you know as soon as we find out. There are also plans to both call and email non-responding households. So you may have people in your community who say, I got a call from this weird number. I didn't pick up, they left a voicemail. Is it a scam? It sounds like a scam. I've heard the voicemail, it's pretty standard. It's like an automated voicemail. So it does sound a little bit scammy, but it is verifiable. The number that they share on the voicemail is the number that is shared by the Bureau. And you can very quickly verify this by just Googling the number, and the Census Bureau's kind of main line will pop up. Next slide. So now going back to door knocking, and this is an unfortunate development that just happened this past week. This was reported by NPR on July 30th, but there are plans for door knocking to be cut short by 1 month from October 31st to September 30th. Although this has not been confirmed in writing, if you take a look at the operational adjustments website, the website no longer indicates October 31st as the last date. There's kind of like boilerplate language about the Bureau doing their best that they can to get the count done. And so we're pretty, at least on the NALEO end, we're pretty confident that this has been moved. The Bureau is supposed to publish a tip sheet today, hopefully within the next few hours, that confirms some of this. What we're also trying to keep an eye on is whether the September 30th change only impacts door knocking, so only impacting NRFU, or if it impacts the entire operation. Because it may be possible that door knocking is cut short on September 30th, but then the online portal and then paper questionnaires can still be coming in until October 31st. However, whatever results is really critical, right? Because what is essentially happening here is that the Bureau is being forced to rush the census, which feels very intentional. The hardest to count folks, we know them, we are them. We've been working really hard to reach those people. And we know that we really needed the support of both the Census Bureau to get that done, right? So one of the things that we'd like folks to think about, and I'm reading the chat here, Alex mentions this also drastically impacts people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, which I don't see included in this statement. Thank you for mentioning that, Alex. I will definitely, this is a statement from my national director, so I'll definitely give her that feedback, but that's very important as well because many of those folks do depend on a door knocker to come and support them in filling out the census. So thank you for mentioning that. But I think what Alex says also points to a larger picture, right? This is going to impact every hardest to count tract. And so the urgency around the work that we do is now amplified. And we should still continue to encourage folks really to respond, and that especially around NERFU, to let people know. If you want to do a kind of a quick stop the knock campaign or what have you, then we need to really get moving. NERFU for almost all the AOCs starts in about a week on the 11th. So please, I'm going to have some more calls to action, but what this really does is raise the urgency for Congress to act to make sure that the statutory deadlines for reporting apportionment and redistricting data from the 2020 census. So as many of you remember, earlier in the spring, when the Bureau changed their the deadline internally, they requested that the statutory deadlines also be changed. That still hasn't happened, right? So we still have an opportunity to kind of help support the Bureau in this request. Next slide. So as I mentioned, we have opportunities to take action. I'm so sorry for my very noisy cat behind me. So here linked is a Census Project sign-on letter where if your organization can wants to and can sign on, that they ask that you please complete this form. Everybody should respond by end of day Wednesday, August 5th. So there's the urgency around this, and as soon as I'm done with my part, I'll be sure to link everything I've mentioned here into the chat. Other opportunities, folks can issue a statement in opposition to the effort to shortchange the census operations. You can write an op-ed to talk about how this would harm your community. And you could send an action alert to your members, encouraging them to call their senators to vote to extend the statutory deadlines. Other resources and materials, Terry-Ann Lowenthal, who is a well-known census expert, has coalition talking points for legislative advocacy. I'll also link this. Please don't post this document on any public-facing websites or send directly to reporters. We're just trying to keep our messaging concise and tight. And then I think Dr. Valencia is actually gonna cover the new maps that came out of CUNY, but I also have them linked here. These maps show us kind of how far we are behind based on where we were in 2010. And it doesn't look great for Texas, but I think Dr. Valencia is going to cover this. Next slide. So just as a reminder, and I mentioned this on our last call, but I just want to cover what NERFU will kind of look like and just some things to keep in mind. So non-response follow-up is NERFU. So the soft launch of NERFU has already started, and the Bureau has a map of the current launches. We anticipate there will be about 500,000 census enumerators in the field. And just as a reminder, journalists and community members cannot follow enumerators. If a census taker does visit a home or the home of a neighbor, landlord, or other proxy, they're never gonna ask to enter the home. They're gonna identify themselves and wear a US Census Bureau badge, and they're only gonna ask questions that are on the questionnaire. And they're never gonna ask for or request additional documentation. If you hear that there is something like this happening in the field, please let us know. We want to raise this or let your partnership specialist or Census Bureau staff know. This needs to be raised. Again, every Census Bureau staff are well trained. They have a great script. They're supposed to be direct and to the point. And so any deviation is important for us to know so that we can raise the flag. And again, census takers are given their own PPE and they will wear masks at the door. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, NERFU is supposed to begin for all of the AOCs starting on August 11th. Next slide. So just some tips for NERFU. So Census Counts organize a webinar and slides that review what NERFU is. So if you need a reminder or refresher, they're linked here. And then in addition, there's CUNY's Hard to Count map organizers shared some notes on NERFU. They were especially helpful for me as I was kind of putting this together. For example, Community Action Partnership created two really helpful graphics to share. So there's one in Spanish and one in English. The one in Spanish is you can view it here, and you can download it and use it however you see fit. And then Naleo, along with Census Counts, also created a fact sheet. So just a quick and concise, actually it's not super quick, but it is a fact sheet. It does cover what NERFU is. So if you have any lingering questions, you can definitely find the answers there. Next slide. And then with that, I'll open it up to questions, but as always, you can, if you have a question later on, I'm here to answer it. And in the meantime, I'll pop the links into the chat. And if you're missing anything or you want any additional resources, please let me know. At the end of the slides, we'll have my email. So you also have an opportunity to email me directly if you have. And then Carlos asked in the Q&A, will we be given a copy of this presentation? Yes, if you signed in using your email, Katie typically sends out the slides and the recording of the webinar about 2 days after we actually do it. So probably around Wednesday, and then we'll supplement that with anything that might come up. So if we get a tip sheet before Wednesday, then we'll definitely include that as well. We've not asked, where can we get response rate shapefiles or shapefiles for updated census tracts? I think this is a question for Dr. Valencia.
Sure, I can help with that. Basically, you can download the shapefiles from the Census Bureau's website. You can get shapefiles also from the CUNY Hard to Count map. But definitely, if you have any questions, I can try to put in the links to where those shapefiles can be accessed. But if you have any questions, feel free to send me an email at lila.valencia@utsa.edu, and I'll be happy to help you with that.
Okay, so that's all that we have up for now. As I mentioned, please feel free to continue sending us questions. And then please do know that as these things shift and change, that we will try to send out the best possible information. One thing that at least here at Naleo we hold close to our chest is that we try to make sure that we have the best available information. Many times, as you all know and have experienced yourself, that sometimes, well, at least here internally, I'll share that sometimes we'll hear rumblings of something and it'll come to fruition, and then at times it won't. And so we try to make sure we at least are sharing, whatever is most current, and try to give the best guidance around that. So thank you all for your patience and for your understanding, and for continuing to do the work that you do. And I'll give it back to you, Katie.
Thank you so much, Genesis. And again, for folks who are tuning in on Facebook or via the Zoom at any time, feel free to pop those questions in and we're happy to answer them. Now we are going to shift gears and I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Lila Valencia to walk us through the data.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I have some kind of exciting news in terms of response rates. Texas has actually been doing pretty well. We saw some decent increases in our response rate, and we're still a ways off, but let me go ahead and share some of those figures with you. On this slide here, I link to the resources that I'm presenting today, and it's the ones that we've been reviewing from about the beginning of these Monday updates. And so you've got the Census Bureau's self-response map, the Census Bureau's Tableau dashboard that has the rankings, the CUNY Hard to Count map, and then we have the Texas Demographic Center map and dashboard. So the Census Bureau self-response map is one of the places where you can scroll all the way down to the bottom to find access to the data. And then the CUNY hard to count map has them a little bit more hidden, but it's usually under more info. And when I get to that page or that image, I'll kind of see if we can point out where that is exactly where you can find it. But I will provide those links to you as soon as I finish with this update. Next slide, please. So here is where we are. As of Friday, we closed out the week at 57.8% response rate. We had started the week at about 57.3%. So within a week, we went up almost a full percentage point, which I know sounds like, how can we be happy about that? But this really showed an uptick in the daily response rates that we had been seeing. The national response level is at 62.8%. So as you can see, we're still behind the national response rate, but we are still counting. We are still moving up. We are no longer stagnant as we had been for a little while. The highest ranking state still remains Minnesota, and they have a 72.2% response rate. They have met their 2010 response goal. Texas is ranked 39th, but we, as of Friday, were not sharing that that ranking. We had been a neck and neck with Mississippi, kind of going back and forth in terms of whether we were ahead or whether we were tied. And right now we are ranked 39th on our own. So putting a little bit of an extra lead in our response rate would get us well over the Mississippi rate and a lot closer to the New York State rate. So that would be great. We have an estimated, I think it's closer to 92 million now that have responded in the US. And for households, we have over 7 million Texas households that have responded. Next slide, please. So in terms of the county level response rates, what we are seeing is more and more blue in our map, which means that more and more counties in our map are over that 50% threshold, which is a good thing, right? Because we are then able to know that the Census Bureau does not have to go to as many households, especially now, given the shortened time frame for response. And so what we're seeing is strong response in what we call the population triangle that's anchored by the big urban cities, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the Houston area, and over in the west with Austin and San Antonio. And then we are also seeing in particular strong response in the suburban parts of the state. And we are also seeing significant response in the West Texas areas, especially in El Paso, in the Lubbock and San Angelo area, and Randall counties as well. We now have 99 counties that have a 50% plus response rate. We have some counties that are on the verge. And when I say on the verge, I mean 49.9% response rate. So really, really close. And those counties are Terry, Valverde, Hamilton, and Camp counties. So if you are working in those areas, try to take a look at the response rate within those counties to see where you might be able to move the needle and get these counties past that 50% threshold. At the top right of this image, you'll see where it says rankings here. This next slide shows those rankings. And on this slide, you can see that we have the rankings by state, the rankings in terms of the number of households, not really a ranking, just a number there, and then the rankings by county and by city at the bottom. I have selected for Texas under state, and so it gives me the rankings just for the counties in Texas and for the cities in Texas. And we have been seeing our response rate really be driven up by small Texas counties and small cities. The biggest daily increases continue to be seen in those smaller counties and cities. We have over 102 cities that have reached their 2010 milestones. So that's great. But of course, this is out of 1,208 cities in Texas. So you can see that's about, less than 10% of our Texas cities have reached that milestone. So we have some things to celebrate, but we also have some work that remains to be done. We have some cities that are very, very close to that 2010 milestone. Bedford, Coppell, Socorro, Cedar Park. These are all cities that are right at the verge of meeting their 2010 milestones. If you go to the CUNY map, you'll be able to see exactly how many households you would need to add to make that 2010 milestone. And so I encourage you to take a look, if you are working in these cities, to take a look at those maps. Next slide, please. Now, this is one of the maps that Genesis mentioned in her presentation. This is a map from CUNY, the same people who are putting together the Hard to Count map. And this looks at all of the counties in the US, and it looks to see which counties have met that 2010 milestone, that 2010 self-response rate in the last decennial census, and which ones have not. So all of the counties that are in green have a response rate that is above the 2010, but the yellow and orange and red are all counties that still have not reached that 2010 response rate. And so in the state of Texas, of our 254 counties, we have one county that has reached that milestone, and that county is Jackson County. It reached its milestone, I think, over a week ago. There are a couple of counties that are very, very close. Burnett County really just needs like a small fraction of a percentage point to reach that goal. Johnson County needs a couple percentage points. Goliad, Lampasas, and Parker are all within 2 percentage points of that 2010 milestone. But as Genesis mentioned, this really does paint a stark picture, given that we are shortening the response rate time and that so many of our counties still have not reached that 2010 milestone, or that 2010 response rate that we had in the last decennial census. Next slide, please. So I wanted to share our map with you one more time. This is our Texas Demographic Center response dashboard. And so basically, when you select a census tract, which I have selected one there in Smith County, you get to the response rates for the census tract and the 2010 response rate for the census tract, the response rate for the county, as well as the 2010 county response rate. You get the same 2 response rates for the state as well as for the US. And then you have a dashboard of other characteristics that are part of the hard to count characteristics, as well as internet availability and the way that the Census Bureau initially invited households in those particular census tracts to participate. So we have added a new feature. If you'll go to the next slide. Right next to the self-response rate and hard to count population tab, we now have a new tab that's called the self-response rate 2010 and 2020. And what we're showing here is similar to the CUNY map, where you can select a particular census tract and it will tell you the 2010 response rate as well as the 2020 response rate and how many households are needed to meet the 2010 response rate in that particular census tract. So this particular census tract that I've highlighted here is in San Patricio County. It's census tract 103.02. They have about 1,700 households, and 810 of those households have not responded to the 2020 census. In order to meet that 2010 response rate milestone, we would need an additional 138 households to respond. And so we just wanted to put that there so that people can see from a distance, sort of a bird's eye view, what parts of the state still have a lot of work to do, as well as what parts of the state down to the census tract level have met that 2010 decennial census milestone. Some census tracts will not have this information because they are new to they are a new geography, so we don't have a response rate for them for 2010, but where we do have one, we have highlighted these statistics for that. Next slide, please. And as always, we encourage you to let people know how your area is doing. Celebrate those small milestones, those small victories that we are getting at the local level, and share it on social media. Also remind people that there's more room, room for improvement and more work to do. We post our response rate tweets on our social media every day between 3 and 5 p.m. depending on our workload, but we update it after 2 p.m. after the Census Bureau updates their data, and we share it out on our social media, and we encourage you to retweet what we're sharing or to go into the apps and tweet for yourself how your area is doing. We really do think this sort of sharing of information helps keep the 2020 census in the conversation and front of minds for many people in our communities. Thank you for all of your hard work, and that's all I have, Katie.
Thank you so much, Lila, for sharing out. I do want to take another pause to see if we do have any questions. I do know we have one coming in from Facebook. This comes from Dr. Jennifer Edwards. And her question was around, so with these new changes, should we still think of October 31st as the deadline? Should we adjust to September 30th? And I'm going to attempt to answer this question, and Genesis, please step in if I'm saying something wrong. But from my understanding and what we've learned about today is that the end of September is when NRFU operations will start. And we currently don't know whether or not folks will still be able to self-respond during the month of October. Hoping to get more clarification on that this week, and hopefully I answered that question correctly.
So I'll add that, yeah, this is a question that we're kind of thinking about right now and trying to come up with a concise answer because as I mentioned, so I think Katie, you might have misspoken a little, but maybe I heard you a little bit wrong too, but so August 11th is when NRFU starts for all of the AOCs. And now the idea is that all of the door knocking will end by September 30th. We don't know if now the entirety of the operation will also end on September 30th, which is what adds the urgency to this particular change. It is possible that the online portal will continue to be open and that the Census Bureau may be able to take in any remaining paper questionnaires that are being mailed in. But as you guys can imagine, we don't really have, since we don't really have that answer right now, we're working with the information we do have. We anticipate that by the end of today, hopefully we'll get more information and we'll get a specific date. But at least on our end, we should continue, at least I'll speak for my end as Naleo, that we're looking at September 30th as really the last day. But this is, again, an ongoing situation. And so as we learn more, we'll definitely continue to keep you updated. And I'm sure that Katie will also send any updated information with the slides and with the recording.
Thanks, Genesis. Don't believe we have any other questions, but again, if you do, feel free to pop them in the appropriate places. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit. Again, really excited to be joined by Ms. Sarah Segredo-Haymond and then Ms. Thelma Tamez. They had led a really exciting opportunity in the Valley around census scholarships. And so I wanted them to join us today to talk about how they're hopefully taking their efforts statewide and potentially across the country. So welcome, Sarah and Thelma.
Thank you so much for the introduction. We are really grateful to be on this call today and to be informed and listen in. This is really important information for us. In our area is one of the lowest area returns as far as census being reported. And we came up with a pilot program where we went to a regular high school locally, and we said, let's see if we can get buy-in, because technically those that are interested in the census or care about it have already done it. The rest are either uninterested, misinformed, or scared. And so we figured, let's give money to students, to high school students, to see if that would pique their interest to get involved in the census, to figure out what it is, and to get their parents buy-in. So we did it for 2.5 weeks, and we got about 68 responses out of 386 students. And we thought, okay, we can take this concept valley-wide. And so we did. We got an executive committee to get together in our area in the Rio Grande Valley. Willacy, Cameron, Hidalgo, and Star all came together to provide scholarship money to students to spread the word that they can win some money, and that in order for them to win, they have to report to our website the census with a picture and information, so that we can put them into this like a raffle, basically. Thelma, do you want to chime in?
Hi, yes, thank you so much for having us here. And I definitely want to go ahead and share that our main goal was to make sure that we help to encourage and develop the next generation of leaders. The students that we're targeting are students that in 10 years from now, they're going to be graduating from high school, they're going to be graduating from their undergrad. So the impact that's going to happen in the next 10 years is going to play a big role on their future. What we were trying to go ahead and do is create that trust and create that connection within the students to their parents. We launched the scholarship and we launched the pilot. We started getting calls of parents of students that had never done the scholarship, that had never done the census before, that were concerned that they had lost their confirmation number to even start the census process. They weren't aware that they could bypass that information. So it was just giving them an avenue, an incentive that would encourage them with the goal of submitting the census. So our way of attracting the attention of the population that's currently undercounted was the incentive part. With the how to, these were the only steps that you needed to do, was complete the census. But not only that, were they going to complete the census, it gave us the opportunity for the students to become ambassadors and for them to provide their parents that peace of mind, for them to encourage their friends, their family. And that's how now we're at a regional level, and we're starting to see return of investment.
We are also wanting to take this concept to other areas across Texas that may need that are low in their numbers and may need that support. So I know that I've already reached out to Brazoria and Buda. There's a huge Hispanic group there that live there that have already looked into the buy-in. We already have all the forms. We have everything set up, and it's just easy for us to just pass everything over. They've already been attorney approved. I mean, so it's an easy concept to launch in any other city in Texas that you feel is having a need, and that may want to offer the same program for their areas, such as Laredo.
Thank you, ladies. Oops,
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry. So if anybody wants to submit information, or I can put my information in the chat. You can reach out to us, and we'll be more than happy to share the concepts and the ability to run it in other areas as well in Texas.
Thank you so much. And it looks like we already have some interest from Francisco, who is from the Harris County Precinct 2. And so Sarah and Thelma will put their contact information in the chat box. And then in that follow-up email that I'll be sending with all of these great links, we'll be sure to include their contact information as well as any relevant collateral in it as well. So thanks again so much for joining us, and y'all feel free to reach out to them in the chat box. All right, folks, now we are going to switch gears and start rounding out our webinar today with some Get Out the Count efforts. If you remember last time if you joined us, I shared this two-pager from the Census Bureau just around ideas around encouraging response rates. I just wanted to put this before you again because it does have quite a few links and information that you can utilize to help spread the word about responding to the census. In addition to that, if you remember, and I think these can definitely serve two purposes now, but households have been receiving emails from the Census Bureau to alert them about responding to the 2020 census. And so there was an ask to create graphics specifically alerting folks to emails. So we have these. Excited to hear that we can continue using these, knowing that the Census Bureau is going to continue using email communication. We currently have these in English. We'll have them in Spanish as well, and we'll be sure to get these to you if you want to start sharing them out. In addition to that, there was also an ask around responding to the census using your smartphone. So two quick and easy graphics that you can share out to remind communities and families in your area that you can respond to the census on your smartphone device. And lastly, another graphic that we have created is alerting communities that the census takers are coming to communities soon. So do know that we are planning to create more graphics related to enumerators entering communities, specifically also what they look like, what they're going to ask, what they are going to do and aren't going to do. Again, we'll make sure that these are in English and Spanish, and we highly encourage you to start sharing these out on socials now, especially since the message right now is if you don't want to knock, make sure you're completing the 2020 census online, over the phone, or by mail today. In addition to that, a little bit of a bonus, the Census Bureau has a pretty good video around enumerators entering communities. It's 30 seconds long. I encourage you, if you are wanting to spread more education and awareness, to share that out. The video is in English as an FYI. In addition, I'm actually going to pass this over to my amazing intern, Jamie, but we wanted to alert you to a couple of deadlines as well as an exciting event that Texas Counts and NALEO are leading.
Thanks, Katie. And like Katie said, my name is Jamie and I'm the Texas Counts intern. And today I wanted to share two things with y'all. And so PEBT, it's a tongue twister, which stands for the Pandemic Electronic Benefits Transfer, is a one-time benefit for families who have lost access to free or reduced price school meals due to the COVID-19 closures. And so eligible families can have a one-time payment of $285 for each of their children who are currently in school. And this is taking into account all of the meals that they missed because of the school closures. And families are encouraged to apply before the deadline. And the good thing about this program is that there's no citizenship question within the application. And it's a super simple application. It usually just asks for your student's ID as well as where they go to school. And you can actually find all of the applications within your school district. And a lot of school districts actually sent the link. And they do ask for Social Security, but that can be left blank within the application. So we don't have to worry about that. And this doesn't count against people it doesn't count against public charge. So that's another good thing. And so we're just encouraging families to apply before the deadline because this is a great way to really have an extra support system for this. And then this is just the Spanish version of it. And I'm excited to announce an event that we're going to have this Thursday, and it's called the Advocacy 101 for Emerging Leaders, Creating Meaningful Change During COVID-19. And this is hosted in collaboration with the NALEO Educational Fund. And this is a great way for anyone, any high school students, college students, emerging leaders who are looking for connection and ways to promote their advocacy. Because due to COVID-19, I know it's been difficult to really get out there and advocate, but we're hoping to empower everyone and being able to leverage our voices in our community. And so this event will feature amazing speakers, an amazing range of panelists that we have from all across the nation. And we're just hoping to ask them some questions about how they've been able to really get out in their community and make meaningful change, as well as receiving advice for emerging leaders on how they can create meaningful change within their community. And we're also going to have ways to take action through voter registration and the census. And this isn't exclusive to just high school students or college students. This is really open to anyone who is looking ways to make an impact within their community and who wants to learn more about ways that people have been able to advocate during the pandemic. And so it's this Thursday at 6:30 via Zoom. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing such important information. And so again, I know that we typically don't, around those benefits, we don't typically share things out like that. But again, we want to make sure that our families and our kiddos have the food that they need. So we encourage you to share those out. And of course, we know that the census informs information and funding for things like food security programs. In addition, we do hope that everyone is able to join us this Thursday. Really excited for the amazing group of panelists that Jamie and Irma from NALEO have pulled together. So we hope that you'll join us, and we'll be sure to share the link to RSVP for that event as well. And last but not least, I know that we shared graphics, and folks are wondering where those are. If you go to the Texas Counts website and click on this toolkit for counting in every corner of Texas, oops, sorry, I actually clicked on it. I'll just show you virtually. So if you click on this, it will take you back to that toolkit that we had for the Texas Counts road trip, but we also updated it to more recent information and graphics. And then all of those new graphics that we shared today are currently there and ready to go. So you can just click on those, copy and paste. We're adding the downloadable links there. So coming soon, but do know those are already up and ready for you to use. Just head to the Texas Counts website and they should hopefully be accessible for that. And then here's just a sample of what that looks like. As you know, we have moved to an every other week platform for the Texas Counts Weekly Update, but we also know information is constantly and ever changing. And so we are planning to, again, continue this format of every other week. So we'll be back again on August 17th. But do know whether it's through NALEO or the Texas Counts, we will continue to keep you updated on the most important information. I know if most of you are on the Texas Counts email blast list, and so if there is any changes and important dates that we need to share out, do know that we'll get those to your inboxes as soon as possible. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and pause to see if we have any remaining questions. Again, thank you to Sarah and Thelma for sharing that amazing opportunity. Looks like we have quite a bit of interest from the chat conversations. And of course, thank you to each of you for tuning in today. The census world is ever changing. And again, we just appreciate your commitment and support to make sure that everyone in Texas is counted. So I'll pause for a couple of seconds to see if we have any questions. And then if not, we'll go ahead and close out for today.
I'll also add that it seems like the links didn't really work as I tried to send them in the chat or in the Q&A. So just know that Katie will be sending out, again, the slides and the webinar and the recording. And so all the links are there and they're working. And it looks like maybe we have something in the, yeah, so Juliet says she appreciates all the info. Thank you. Thank you again to all of you as well. And then Davina Morris asks, this is a great question. I received information from the census that this is Rural Week of Action. Is Texas Counts planning anything?
Hey, Davina. Actually, that hasn't come across my radar, but let me do some digging. And if you don't mind forwarding that email to me, we don't have anything planned, but we can definitely do a really big social media push and get the message out. So thanks for bringing that to our attention, and we'll be sure to promote. Great. Well, thanks again, everyone, for joining us. We are going to go ahead and sign off. All of our emails are on this slide. So if you need us, reach out. You know, we're always excited and willing to help. Stay safe out there. Continue getting our communities counted, and we'll be in touch soon. Thanks, everybody.